Hi there, I'm Mike Larson, Editor-in-Chief with MoneyShow, and I'm coming to you from the MoneyShow Master Symposium in Hollywood, Florida. Today I'm speaking with Kevin Maloney, founder and CEO of Property Markets Group. Kevin, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thank you so much for taking some time out to chat here.
Not a problem, love to.
Yeah, we're here in South Florida where you have a lot of projects now. You have tremendous development and real estate experience in this area. Why don't you set the stage and describe market conditions at this time?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So in the condo space, we just launched about $4 billion of new projects this year. We launched really in the middle market, which is kind of the $1 million to $3 million apartment range or condo range. That market is we're still very bullish on. It's still very strong. We also have quite a bit of product that is kind of that $5 million and up range and $15 million and up range. We find that market is continuing to be soft and is getting a bit softer.
Okay, let's talk about the multifamily space in general here in South Florida, also New York. How would you describe that part of the market?
So outside of New York is really kind of the opposite market of where everybody else is. The New York market still has incredibly high rents, incredibly high occupancy, very few new projects coming online. So the supply side of the equation is really very small. And it's really pushing rents. Rents in New York for multifamily, really in the boroughs, new product are in the $90 a foot range annually. And within New York City are certainly north of $100 a foot and really north of $130 a foot. So it's quite expensive, but there's not a lot of product being delivered. Around the rest of the country, if you want to talk about, we're really on the Eastern Seaboard. We're in Nashville, we're in Atlanta, we're in a dozen markets in the state of Florida. We've delivered several thousand units in the last several years. Most of the markets we delivered in are markets where they were very strong at the time we launched the projects or began building. Most of those markets became overbuilt because everyone else had the great idea of building in those markets, so they're oversupplied. A lot of rent concessions, softer rents. There's a great deal of multifamily that's trading today at debt levels. So about 70% of actually replacement costs, which brings a great opportunity for people that are well capitalized.
How do you think we are positioned in terms of the multifamily cycle relative to other parts of the market? Office, for example, retail, things that people want to know about.
So, specifically in Florida, the office market is quite robust. It's a strong market. You have a lot of relocation of firms from the Northeast down to, tax-free states like Florida. And so a lot of the urban centers in Florida have very low vacancy and rents are swinging upward. So around the country, and let's talk about multi.
Sure.
And so multi is, as I said, is generally soft, really around the country and in the Southeast. But again, as an asset class, it kind of ebbs and flows. Bought right. And I think it's a great time to be buying in the multifamily space. But the office space, is strong, robust, and continues to grow.
Got it. You talked about some interesting niches, the co-living type environment, and also just on stage, and also those urban infill type projects, which have different dynamics. Talk a little bit about operating in those markets.
Yeah. So years ago we still have some a portion of our portfolio that's co-living, very small, probably less than 10%. But the co-living space really was not a successful product for us. I don't think the product really works well.
Yeah.
I think it's, you get pretty low credit tenants, you get a lot of damage. It takes more supervision. There's a lot of move-ins and move-outs. And you do get a premium in the rent. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze in that space. So we're not in that space going on a go-forward basis. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Sure. The urban infill.
Oh, yeah.
So for those programs.
Yeah. So we've always been an urban infill builder, right? So we find strong cities with good growth and we find sites in those cities, and we'll either build a condo product if that works, or we'll build a multifamily product in those markets. As I said, the multifamily in most of those markets that we're in, we're overbuilt, but that's a great story if you're a buyer of that product.
Right. I also want to talk about a topic that's been discussed over the last few years, which is converting office property into apartment living and some of the issues, the problems with that, and how pricing factors in. I mean, is it economical anywhere at this point?
Well, where this was happening mostly, from my experience, is happening mostly in New York City, where the commercial office market was devastated during COVID. And even post-COVID, it was very difficult to get people who are used to working from home saying, why should I come into the office? Two things happened. That dynamic changed, and that office space is now stronger. And so it's really returning to office. But during that time when there was a transition that was possible, there were very few buildings that fit into that mold because of very large floor plates and how do you fit a multifamily into deep, dark floors. So there were very few buildings that fit that. That said, there were several dozen conversions in New York, but that was probably less than 2 or 3% of the office or commercial product in New York. I think that ship has sailed though for now because frankly, they work as office buildings at the basis that they were bought at.
Are there any trends in the commercial market, whether it's multifamily or some other parts, that you think are the next story that people aren't talking about enough, if that was the story of a year or two or three ago?
So again, I'm a buyer of multi today because it's so depressed. When you can buy a brand new building in a city at the same cap rate and it's 70% of what it costs to replace it today, I think that's a great story. In other spaces that I love I'm always a fan of the warehouse space and distribution space. It's still growing. It's still strong in the United States. I also like land development, which is really large swaths of land that is going to be approved and improved and then sold off as a housing development, single family home development to one of the large builders in the country. We do a lot of that as well. Yeah.
Another question would be financing costs, not just what's happening with base rates, but also with some of the private credit worries that have been going on. Is that spilling over into any other parts of the financing market or not really at this point?
Not, but I think credit's going to be a lot tougher going forward. I think the credit markets are definitely tightening up. I think that people are worried. They're trading lower grade credit for better grade credit. I think we're going to, and by the way, the spreads are kind of widening in that marketplace. So I think credit's going to be is going to be a little bit of a concern. I also think interest rates are going to be a concern in the future. We were on a relatively strong path to a stable economy, low unemployment, really low inflation, and that all got turned on its head. I mean, we had tariffs and we have immigration issues, and then we have wars. I think all that is, it's going to force the Fed, regardless of, who he's reporting to. It's going to force the Fed to have to crank. You might end up in, really in an economy with deflation, right? Or stagflation rather, and where there really is no growth and high interest rates. That is very much my concern. It's on the horizon, but we're going to see inflation. I think pushing 4% this year. I know the Fed's. The White House is telling you it's 2%, and the Fed finally admitted it's 2.7 to save some face. But I think inflation is obviously much greater, and when that comes to light, I think you're going to have to institute some monetary policy to contract our economy.
As we get to the tail end of this conversation, we have some investors at these events that just don't read stocks. We have some that are invested in real estate funds, individual projects. Any advice for someone who's looking at those types of options, what they need to know if they're getting involved for the first time or getting more involved and committing more capital?
So we had talked a little bit earlier about REITs, and I like the REIT play if you're, again, good coupons and REITs and definitely tied to interest rates. So if interest rates rise, REITs are going to soften in terms of their price point, but the yields will stay relatively consistent, or they're competing with rates, they're going to start to rise. So I like the REIT as long as you diligence what the REIT is and what is backstopping the REIT. What's that real estate look like? I also like finding a good private developer, right? I mean, we raise capital, not to sell us, but we raise capital, and we're a seasoned, strong developer, and we're good stewards of our investors' money. So, that's a good place to be too. Our returns have always been high and consistent. If you're going to be in the real estate, I would also say don't put all your eggs in one basket and sprinkle your money around, even with one developer, 5 or 6 different projects, because ultimately you're going to have a bad project in there, and if you have 5 great projects and one bad one, you're still going to have a great return portfolio. So, I like that too. I'm also a trader in the market, the bond market. So, all great asset classes now, maybe with the right approach.
I did think of one last question because I wrote it down earlier. I wanted to ask. You mentioned on stage that you've been in this business for a long time. You've been through multiple cycles, things like 2007, 2008, and so on. What does somebody need to know who maybe doesn't have that experience? What did you learn from that? What kind of advice would you pass on, given that history?
So I've always been a contrarian, right? So when 2007 happened or 1991 happened, I was buying. And no one else was buying. Often what happens during those cycles too, the debt markets move away, they collapse, they won't lend you. So you got to have good access to capital. But I always buying in those cycles at the bottom of and even 2007 happened so quick. 2007 happened quickly, and then started to recover really about 2 years later. So the cycle was the trough of that was very short. I think being a contrarian in that cycle, people did very well. In 91 too. 91 was a longer cycle. Because those are the 2 big ones. There are a lot of smaller dips during my career, but in the 91 cycle, it was the S&L bailout. Banks weren't lending. Credit was crushed, but assets were dirt cheap, right? Great assets. So, and if I could do it again, I would have been more of a 20/20 hindsight. But I'm still a very big contrarian. When things are soft, I want to keep my powder dry, and I want to be in that market buying it.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.